All right, thanks everybody for coming out this afternoon. I'd like to welcome a few of our council folks here and thank them for coming here. First, we'll be hearing from Councilwoman Green here shortly, but I want to also welcome Councilwoman Flood and Councilwoman Denton, Councilwoman Leet, Councilwoman Parker, and representing the male species, Councilman Benson over here. Thank you for coming out here. Thank you all for coming here today. As everybody knows, public safety is the first and foremost responsibility of Metro government. It's by far the largest item in our budget, and it's the task of more than 1,250 men and women of LMPD to devote themselves 24/7, 365 days a year to the big task of public safety. Our police officers have the courage to take on an incredibly difficult job that's essential to our society. And I'm proud of the way our city is moving full force into support for our police officers, support for our community, support for Black lives, support for Blue lives. It's important that everybody is part of this discussion and leaning into the ambiguity that's involved with this in our country as we move forward together. But the important thing is that we are talking and that we are moving forward as one unit. Our job at Metro government, obviously, is to facilitate and participate and lead a lot of those discussions. As it relates to our police officers, our job is to give our police every tool that we possibly can that's available to keep our citizens safe. And in some cases, that means everything from working with, from one end to the other, working with police dogs to SWAT tactics to community policing and outreach, technology solutions, et cetera. So today we're here to talk about LMPD's adoption of a new technology and tactics to better equip our officers so they can do all they can do to keep our community safe. Just a few examples of things that we've done over the past couple years to, in the area of technology to give officers more tools. In 2014, we created the Real-Time Crime Center, where specifically trained LMPD crime analysts combine video monitoring with data analysis and research into social media and other online sources to help officers in the field. Another example has been the video camera technology and thermal imaging to our LMPD air unit that we installed earlier this year. That's helped with everything from tracking suspects to dealing with traffic backups to finding missing children. Another example, one that's probably most well known in the community, is equipping all of our patrol officers with body cameras. Our research indicated that elsewhere it led to improved safety and fewer citizen complaints, and so we decided to implement body cameras in Louisville as well. That rollout is now complete. We're happy we have them, and we're pleased with the results to date. Now, at its heart, the goal of police work is always the same, and that's about keeping the public safe. One thing that does change, however, outside of that constant, is the tools that are available to our officers. And at Louisville Metro government, we want to do everything that we can possibly do to give our officers every tool that they need to help them do the critical work for our citizens in our city. That's why today we're announcing a new technology tool that we plan to use. I'm going to turn things over to Chief Conrad to give more details. Chief?
Mayor, thank you. Good afternoon. As the mayor mentioned, the Metro Police Department is committed to making sure that our officers have the tools they need to be able to do their job. But we're also committed to doing what we can to better serve the citizens here in our community. And to that end, we spent the past several months researching gunshot detection technology. This technology, and one of the questions we wanted to answer was whether or not it makes sense for our community. I was the chief in Glendale, Arizona for 6 years before I came here. We had gunshot technology, or detection technology there in Glendale. Well, it was there when I got there in 2005, and I have to tell you, I didn't feel like it added a great deal of value to our efforts to address gunshot violence in that community. And sort of with that view, I was, quite frankly, somewhat resistant to this idea. But our research over the last couple of months has really changed my mind. I honestly believe that this technology has improved a great deal. As with any technology, we see that it improves over time, and this is a technology where that has really occurred. just to make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about when I'm talking about gunshot detection technology. Essentially, the technology is based on a number of acoustic microphones that are set up over a large area of a community. And they use a computer system and programming to be able to triangulate where a gunshot is actually fired, and then that information can be relayed to officers in the field and to dispatch centers to make sure that the officers know when and where those shots have been fired. Typically, the way these systems get deployed is a community will look at where they have violent crime, where they have reports of shots being fired, and then the systems are located in those neighborhoods that have the most dense numbers of these types of activities. The thing that is really interesting and sophisticated, these programs now use really sophisticated algorithms to help them differentiate the sound of a gunshot versus the backfire of a vehicle or fireworks. One of the vendors that we've looked at even uses, after that algorithm happens, they have human operators that are listening to the shots and trying to make some additional assessments before this information is passed on to their client police departments. And all of this is happening in less than a minute. So this information is coming very quickly, simultaneously, to the dispatch centers and to the officers, which gets officers out and on the scene in a great or a much faster time than what currently is happening. You know, this technology really greatly increases the police department's ability to do a couple of things. First off and foremost, it gives you the opportunity to gather ballistic evidence. I'm talking about shell casings, fragments of projectiles at the scene where guns have been fired. And also, in some cases, has led to the recovery of weapons that have been abandoned there at the scene. In a few cases, it's even led to the arrest of people that are still there with literally a smoking gun, depending on how close the officers might be to what is occurring. And finally, it allows police departments the opportunity, in many cases, to locate injured victims who are in dire need of medical treatment. The departments that we contacted throughout our research have expressed a great satisfaction with our systems. A number of those cities have even expanded the use of this technology into more neighborhoods after they saw the value that it provided. The communities that have had this system typically experience in the deployment area a tremendous spike in the number of gunshot reports. And that doesn't mean that more guns are being fired. It just means that they're all being recorded and reported to the police. And what they are saying is generally, in these neighborhoods, what they're finding is 60 to 90% of the gunshots that are being fired aren't being reported to the police. And quite frankly, it's because those neighbors have given up on the police, and they've accepted that as the status quo, and no neighborhood should have to put up with that. This gives the opportunity, I believe, for the police and the community to work together in response to this problem. And what these communities that are using this successful approach do is they're sending officers to those scenes. As I said, the information is going directly to them in their cars. It's going to their dispatch centers. They're responding to the scenes, and if they aren't finding a victim at the scene or a suspect with a gun, they're treating that area like a crime scene. A response now to a shots fired call might be the officer responding, looking around, not seeing anything, not hearing anything, and clearing that call. And often citizens say, we called and never saw the police. And that's because the police responded but didn't see anyone and didn't contact any citizens. Under this approach, officers are there, they're treating it like a crime scene, they're looking for evidence, they're being given information that directs them in a very close proximity to where that shot was actually fired. It also dictates that they contact citizens. They do a canvass of the area to talk to citizens about what they've seen, what they might have heard. This all does a great deal to build citizens' confidence that the police care about that community and they care about that neighborhood, and you start to change that idea of people not calling and not getting involved, because what they're seeing with every shots fired response is the police The police are there. They're knocking on doors. They're talking to people. They're collecting evidence, and they're doing what they can to try to make it better. And these communities have seen a decrease in the reports of gunfire in these neighborhoods and a corresponding decrease in violent crime. And those are the kinds of results that we would love to see here. You know, the benefits we've talked about, along with making people feel better, making people work more with us, or getting people to help us in our effort to address crime. It also gives us a chance, again, to collect more of that ballistic information that may allow us to link a shots fired call to other shootings and homicides in our city. And as we collect guns or come across guns as we're making arrests, we test fire those guns, and it gives us an opportunity then to tie that gun back to multiple crime scenes and maybe some of these shots fired calls. I think the systems that are most effective, again, have the officers responding in a timely manner, treating it like a crime scene, interacting with people in those communities, and the community members then getting involved and having more trust in the police. And really, I think the bottom line is all of this research has led us to the conclusion that this technology is definitely viable. It is something that I believe would help us in our community. We, as part of the budgeting process, made a promise to come to the Public Safety Committee of Metro Council. We're scheduled to do that on October the 26th at 3:30 p.m. That'll be in Metro Council chambers. We will be able to provide them with a more detailed report, answer any questions that they may have, and then we will be moving forward with a procurement process that will start with a request for proposals to look for vendors to be able to provide us with this technology. We're very excited about what we've learned.
Thank you, Chief, and I'd like to thank the Metro Council as well. During many of our hearings, a lot of different things are discussed in terms of ways to improve our community as it relates to public safety. Gunshot detection is something obviously the police department was aware of, I was aware of, the council was aware of. They encouraged the chief to look at the latest state of the art, if you would. He did that. Obviously, it's his decision on how to deploy his resources here for the safety of our community, and so he's decided to do so. So I want to thank the folks from the council for being here, and then also helping us encourage all of our ways that we can make our city safer. So Councilwoman Green's going to add a few thoughts on that.
Good afternoon, everyone. In April, I held a press conference with area ministers, community activists, Crime Stoppers, Metro Globalization Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods over the spike in homicides specific to West Louisville. My main concern was the increased number of murders and the lack of people willing to call LMPD with information or to speak to the police about what they knew or what they had seen or heard. The escalating violence is something that I don't just see on television, but that I live with every single day of my life. It was my neighborhood in Park Duval in which a teenager was shot while visiting her family members this summer. It was my neighborhood in Park Duval where there was a double homicide earlier this summer, merely about 4 blocks away from my house. This is many people's reality, and it is also my own reality. We deserve to feel safe. We have developed a culture where working with the police is taboo and that there is no honor in helping to solve a crime. There is further evidence of that type of thinking in the recent reports of flyers being distributed in the West End with that message. In June, I came to the Public Safety Committee with my colleagues, Councilman Kevin Kramer and Councilwoman Julie Denton, to discuss a technology that had initially been considered here 7+ years ago. Although that technology was not utilized at that time, we were convinced that right now, with the spike in violent crime in the city of Louisville and the increase in the technology, that now was the appropriate time to deploy that technology. Gunshot technology uses the latest technology to help identify the location of a gunshot within seconds and immediately notifies local police of that incident. This product has been deployed successfully in dozens of U.S. cities, as well as cities in Puerto Rico, South Africa, and the United States Virgin Islands with great success. In 2015, 46 cities where ShotSpotter data was analyzed, the overall median reduction in gunfire was 12.8%, Gunfire rates decrease with the most significant reductions in the Northeast, where this technology has the largest presence. After some initial resistance, my colleagues, Councilman Kramer and Councilwoman Denton, again brought forth the concept of this technology during the budget hearings. I believe that one of the largest obstacles the police face in solving these violent crimes is that no one is willing to come forward and share. There really is a real fear in certain communities of people not wanting to get involved for fear of reprisal. This technology seems to be advantageous in getting officers to the scene of the incident quicker, thus providing more evidence in these crucial hours following a shooting. While we recognize that this is not the only solution to our city's increase in violent crimes, it certainly appears to be a valuable tool. It is a tool that we will be adding to our arsenal of resources that we will be using to take our streets back. We are in need of solutions. The continued violence and seemingly disregard for people's lives has become almost unbearable. We as a community have become desensitized to the continued escalating murders that seem to have daily consequence, and it has to stop. I have always said that we have got to lead on the issue of public safety. We've got to keep the main thing the main thing. It is my top priority for the people of my district and for the entire city of Louisville. That is public safety. The people of Jefferson County deserve to have all available technology and resources utilized for their safety. Today, I am proud to stand with Mayor Fisher, Chief Conrad, and all of my colleagues who are here today to support this endeavor. We are promising our citizens and our constituents that your safety is and will always be our top priority. Today is a wonderful day in the city of Louisville. I am proud to be a Louisvillian today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. As new tools and techniques become available, LMPD, the council, my office obviously will always bring that to each other's attention and explore those and continue to improve. So, well said. I also want to say, oftentimes, obviously it's a difficult time in our country right now. We've got the latest demonstrations taking place in Charlotte, North Carolina. There was an officer-involved shooting in Tulsa just a couple nights before that. A lot of times what you hear from those communities is that people do not feel like they are being heard, especially folks from minority populations, from disadvantaged areas. In our city, what we try to do is get out in front so we can have these conversations so people feel like there's an exchange of information going back, frustration being shared, but action plans being developed as well. So I'd like to ask all the media on your crawlers here between now and tonight, the first community hearing led by LMPD on 21st century policing techniques will be held at 6 o'clock at
The Louisville Urban League.
the Louisville Urban League. So, this is one of the many planned ways we have for people to come forth in the community to not just learn more about the latest in policing techniques nationally and what we're doing locally, but also to share their ideas and their frustrations and give us ideas on how we can be a safer city. So by being more proactive in these ways, as I think our city has been, hopefully that leads to us being a more peaceful city where people are working together at all times to improve public safety for all of us. With that, we'll take a few questions.
There's so many times that when crimes happen, we do have those cameras are up, but that camera wasn't working at the time. How do we maintain these in a better way than we have in the past with other systems?
As your question relates to the gunshot detection technology, the models that we're looking at is as opposed to what we had in Glendale. Glendale had purchased the system, so it became Glendale's responsibility to maintain the system. The system or the model that is being used by the vendors that we are aware of now are really focusing more on a leasing concept, where you're paying more over time, but they are responsible for the installation, the maintenance, and any ongoing problems that you might experience, which allows the technology to stay refreshed.
Do we have a dollar amount on this yet? Like what a range possibly?
We don't. When in talking with ShotSpotter, who shared information with Councilwoman Green and her colleagues, they had shared some numbers with us. But quite frankly, in talking to some of these other communities that have purchased or leased this technology, it was made very, very clear to me that everything is negotiable. And I think if we talk about the amount of money we want to spend or going to spend, that will be the lowest minimum bid we get from anyone. So, we have a responsibility to do a request for proposals, and we're asking for not only the best systems, but that system at the lowest dollar possible to make it for the best value for our citizens.
There is money set aside, though, from just technology funds for the police?
Every year, as part of our budget, we have funds that are set aside for different projects. Some of that money comes from the general fund, some of that comes from forfeited funding. We have forfeited funding that is set aside in this year's budget for technology projects. The way that we're set up is that funding stream can be used for the original purchase. It can't be used for the ongoing cost. So if we do end up doing this leasing approach that we're talking about, we'd have the money to be able to purchase the initial, or to lease and get the initial system set up. But those ongoing costs would have to be budgeted out of the general fund, and that'd be something if we end up getting this, we'd be looking to the Metro Council and, of course, the mayor and the mayor's budget office to build that into upcoming budgets.
Would this be something that would go out in certain neighborhoods first? Would this be rolled out all at once? Have you guys looked into that with some of these companies?
What you find is a kind of a square mileage model for cost. And again, you're trying to put this in the neighborhoods where you're going to get the best improvement. Louisville Metro is close to 400 square miles. That just is not a feasible approach, and we're not seeing anything that large in any other community. Again, the approach that, and I mentioned this, I think, during my comments, is there is an analysis of violent crime and shots fired calls. That's where you start, and then you focus in on the neighborhoods that are seeing the most density. The other thing that we're finding is they look for kind of a continuing or contiguous areas. So this could involve several neighborhoods in our community, and that will be part of the negotiations. We'll want the largest possible area where we're seeing these kinds of problems for the hopefully fewest dollars.
How many vendors do you know will you be looking at, and where will the acoustic sensors actually be placed?
The request for proposal will be a call to all vendors, and that's not something that we do. The Metro government has a purchasing department that will be sending that out, and that information will be shared widely, and we hope that there are a number of companies that bid. We've mentioned ShotSpotter already. They were the ones that talked to us originally. We're aware they can do it, but there are other vendors out there, and in the interest of competition and good pricing, we hope that there are others out there that make this a competition. Now, in terms of the placement of the equipment, that we're going to be looking to that vendor to help work through that process. You have access to poles, buildings, government buildings. They have worked through this in dozens of other communities, and we would look for them to do the same thing here.
Do you know about, I know it's kind of tricky, as you were saying, but do you know about how many neighborhoods might be surveyed with these detection systems?
It's hard to really know, but I'll give you a hint. If you'll go to our transparency page on our website, we have maps on there every month that we refresh, and they will show the hotspots in our community defined by the level of violent crime, the number of homicides, and the number of shootings. That might be at least somewhat consistent with the analysis they might do.
When might these go in?
Again, it is dependent on the procurement process and how long that takes. Based on all of the steps, you're developing an RFP, you're going through a selection, you're negotiating a contract, and then the vendor is going to need to come in and do the installation. I am told, based on our research, that we're looking at a 3 to 6 month installation after the negotiation is done, the contract is signed, and they have started. So I'm thinking next year, best case.
We've got time for a couple more questions.
Chief, we've been here a lot. You've made a lot of announcements, a lot of huge changes for our policing, for our city. This is just another change. Do you feel like you guys are trying to get in front of what's this tide of violence we've seen so much in the city?
I think we're absolutely trying to get ahead of it, and I think it'd be irresponsible for us to continue doing what we're doing the same way we've been doing it, given what we're seeing. And we have overall been able to reduce crime in this community for the last 4 years in a row. However, for the last almost 2 years, we've seen violent crime increase, and this year through the end of August, Violent crime is up almost 12% as compared to this point last year. We've had 86 people already lose their lives this year as compared to 55 last year, an increase of 56%. We've seen an unbelievable number of heroin overdoses, and we know that heroin and drug addiction is driving a great deal of the violent crime we're seeing. And if we don't change what we're doing, we're going to continue to get what we've got. And I think this is a recognition of our need to try to do what we can, to change what we can, to better serve this community. But what is so critically important in all of this is getting the citizens of this community involved. And that really is I think Councilwoman Green made that point well. We've got to get people willing to step up and get involved. It's going to take all of us working together.
That was my next question.
So,
Yes,
Councilwoman
sorry.
Green.
so I'd encourage you too to think about the other announcements we've made since last week, the second chance announcement. So there's a treatment aspect to this as well. You've got law enforcement, you've got treatment where we're trying to help folks that are in the throes of addiction get out of that. Reduce the pressure on our jail in terms of number of people in the jail, save money at the jail, and give more humane treatment at the same time. And then we're also working with our partners from the DEA and the U.S. Attorney that you announced yesterday for the criminals that are selling heroin that's leading to deaths and overdoses. So that those folks are being put away for an awfully long time. So we want to send a message to the streets as well that that's intolerable.
Yeah, Councilwoman Green, I've been on plenty of forums with you where you're like, come on, people, I need you guys to call too. They can't do it all. Do you hope that seeing these officers, now people don't even have to call if shots are fired? Do you hope that seeing...
we still want people to call
Yeah,
and
but I'm
to
saying, do you
report.
think this will change
We still
that?
want people to call and to report, and so I want to encourage people to still do that. But I do know that it is a reality that people are living in fear of if they speak up, that they're afraid that their family is going to be targeted. So I believe that this technology, it will take some of the burden off of folks. And so officers can go ahead and arrive at the scene. There may be shell casings that's left. Some of the technology will allow for camera placement. There may be video that's there. So it will take some of the burden off, especially in our most distressed neighborhoods, for the people who are really afraid of retribution. So I think that it really is a win-win for the entire community.
Do you see at all if this technology has helped officers get to the scene so quickly that they actually can save someone or get them to the hospital faster? Is that something that you saw in your research?
Based on the information from vendors, both of those situations has happened.
One more.
And then for how long, I guess, are you going to give this technology a chance to see what it can do? I know some cities had it for a couple of years, didn't find it helpful enough given the high cost, and got rid of it. I guess how much breathing room are you going to give it, and then by what standards will you evaluate it?
Again, I think we're looking at a point of negotiations. I would imagine that a longer lease period would be more attractive to a vendor than a shorter lease period. So we may look at doing something longer term to get a better price over a course of a number of years, or we may not. We may just go year to year. And I think in terms of the cost, the leasing option appears to be more attractive to the communities. The ones that we were able to follow up with all recommended getting it, and 5 of the 12 that we talked to recommended that, or they actually expanded the system. They were so pleased with what they had seen. So I think the trend is the communities that are using this are, at least the ones we've contacted, have been impressed with the results, and they are continuing to use it over time. A couple of these had been relatively new deployments, but others had been long-term. So I think our focus will be one of long-term, but it's hard to make that commitment without knowing the dollars involved, and you can never make a commitment over fiscal years because we never know what the economy is going to bring.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Right, how do I do this?